Hello, everyone. Welcome to CSA Talks. Today we're hosting dear Henry Lee. She's an intergenerational diversity expert, and this subject, I think, very important for all of us who are working in business environment, because we have been dealing with the generational features, their behavior, their approach, and many question marks in our mind. Therefore, I would like to ask some questions to Henry, who is expert on that. Dear Henry, what do you think about the generations? What are their features, and is it good or bad for us to hire them all together in one company, and what kind of culture they create there? What is unhelpful for them to work together? And is it possible to share your ideas and expertise with us, please?
Yes, of course. The first thing that I want to say is that I think every generation should be in an organization. So younger people who are maybe in the middle of their career, sometimes we call them middle-aged, and older people. And if you imagine that an organization is like a family, in your family, you have different ages. So grandparents, parents, children, uncles, aunts, grandchildren. That's how it should be in an organization, because it's a natural community and we're human beings first before we're business people. So I always say, if you think about an organization as a family, then of course you would have different ages there. Now, it can be unhelpful to look at generational theory and say, well, this generation is like this generation is like this. But what's most important about generational theory is to think about it in two ways. The first way is to say that labeling can be useful only if it is part of the discussion. So sometimes we talk about the oldest generations alive today as being called the greatest generation. I don't know why, but they were called that. And they were born before 1925. Then you have the silent generation, born 1925 to 1945. Then you have baby boomers, which is 1946 to 1964. Then you have Generation X, and they are 1965 to 1980. Then you've got your youngest generations, and your youngest generations are millennials, who are sometimes called Gen Y, and they are born 1981 to 1996. And then Generation Z, which is 1997 to 2009. So we do have a younger generation called Generation Alpha, but they're not in the workplace yet.
Not
yet.
But
there we have all of these generations. So it's 7 generations alive today, of which 5 can be in the workforce. So it's good to think of them as a family. So that's the first key point. The second thing is it's terribly unhelpful if that label becomes an absolute. So if you say, well, you're such a baby boomer, so you're aged between 57 and 75, and you can't think about innovation, and you don't care about young people, that's just not true. Yeah. In fact, human beings are just like a bell curve, and a bell curve is in nature where you have trees that grow together in different shapes and sizes, and that's human beings. So the best thing we can do is to use generational theory, which is just a theory, to talk about how people behave at different ages and life stages. And also the final point I want to make is that generational theory works when it's based on looking at it in terms of world events. If you were a silent generation, you probably went through 2 world wars. Of course, that's going to have had an impact on how you work, how you buy, how you interact, how you communicate, what you think. And if you are a Generation Z and you have grown up with computers, the internet, you've grown up with WhatsApp and Instagram and social media, of course, you're going to think and work and buy and sell differently. So it's important to recognize these big concepts of events that impact every generation, but it's very bad to be absolute and say, well, if you're in this generation, this age, you must behave in this way, because that's not true.
Yeah. Wow. Very good explanation. Thank you so much. I'm sure many people are aware of these beautiful and positive parts of generational harmonization in the companies. I think it's quite important. In today's world, it is not very easy to attract younger generations while we are recruiting them. What kind of tips you can share with us? What shall we do while we are onboarding them to our companies? How can we attract them for the positions we have?
I think the best way to attract them and recruit them is to think about it in 3 steps. It should be quick, it should be easy, and it should be human. So that's 3 steps: quick, easy, human. When it's quick, it means that everything is mobile enabled, because 86% of all individuals under the age of 30 will now just be using a mobile phone, a smartphone, and they want to apply online using their phone. So it's got to be enabled. It's got to be very easy for them to use. It's got to be very quick. Quick would be things like a very quickly completed application form that's online, easy to complete, quick to complete, maybe no more than 10 or 15 minutes. And I've had some organizations say to me, hang on a minute, we've got big jobs to offer people. How can we do such a quick application? And I say, it's your stage 1 application. So it's quick and easy to complete. It allows you to look at the first cohort of people who want to apply for a particular role and go, yes, no, yes, no. And then maybe you can get them to complete a second application or give you more information. But the first one should be really quick and easy. The third point I made is human. You've got to be really human. One of the problems of doing everything online and having a web-enabled application form is that it can feel very lacking in humanity. And most generations, but particularly our youngest, feel terrible if they don't know what's going on, they don't hear yes or no quickly, and they don't get to hear when the position is filled. So the human side is that whilst we're doing things online, whilst we've got everything web enabled, whilst it's mobile enabled and quick and easy, we also need to make sure that there's a human looking at these things, deciding who's not going to get the job and quickly saying no to them in the most compassionate and empathic way possible, professional but caring, and then quickly managing the next cohort of people for the next interviews, the follow-ups, the assessments, whatever, and letting them know it's going to take so many working days before we can get back to you, so that these people feel connected during what can be absolutely an automatic system. And I think if you use speed and ease and humanity, then you will attract not just the youngest generation, but everyone.
For all of us. Yeah, but very practical insights. Thank you so much. And I'm sure for the companies, who are running their business with the old school rules, they will benefit from your words, because, you're totally right. This generation is the next generation. What is next generation? Everything needs to be fast. Everything needs to be, very attractive for them. And they really would like to be, involved to everything. Not an easy job for human resources professionals, I think. And I would like to ask you the question that everyone is asking themselves and the others, this COVID thing. Something will change for sure. And in terms of generations and the work life, what do you think? What will change after COVID?
Gosh, that's probably the biggest question that you could ask anyone. So I'm going to try and give it a number of answers, because for many of us, we really don't know exactly what will happen. But here are some things that may well happen. For a start, we need to understand that 60% of our global workforce still has to go out to work, and they will still have to go out to work once the COVID pandemic is over. They will still have to do that. So they might be in logistics or distribution or factories or warehouses. They might be in schools. They might actually be in hospitals and be frontline workers. So 60% of our global population that can work, that's able to get work, will have to go out to work. So that's one thing that won't change very much. But the second thing that will change is that leaves 40% of people who can work from home or work remotely, and it's here to stay. Remote working was already coming. We were on our journey, but COVID has really accelerated that, so that we will have many more people working from home. And I'm talking to lots of organizations, big and small, who are saying that for the rest of 2021 and maybe into 2022, they will not ask people to come into a bricks and mortar workplace. So we'll see people trickling back, but we'll see fewer people coming into the workplace. Not least because organizations are saving money because there's less travel. They're saving money because they need less square footage. They're saving money on buildings. But they do need to bear in mind that some people need to come into work, and also some people need the connection. I think one change that may happen is that we get a thing called hybrid work. This is where we look at the 40% of a global population that can work remotely, and we say, okay, maybe 9 to 5, Monday to Friday work for you is no longer the case. But what we're going to do is to ask you to work remotely, and we're going to give you collaboration and communication tools, the technology. And on top of that, we're going to organize events, which are perhaps continuing to be socially distanced, but we are bringing you in to a workspace for an event, for onboarding and induction, for perhaps some levels of training, or perhaps for socialization, because human beings need to socialize. You've probably seen, as well as I have, lots and lots of research about how human beings have been very productive during COVID, and it's true. But what is hidden is how we feel about that. And often people feel isolated, lonely, depressed, deprived, lacking in creativity and innovation. And there's research from MIT that says that human beings need to socialize. They need to get together in order to be able to problem solve, to be creative, to ideate, to invent, to innovate, because there's that connection like we make today in these types of talks where we do more than talk to one another. And so it's good to do something electronically, but also good to have this hybrid where we go in and meet people. So I think there's going to be more hybrid where people are seeing the face-to-face is very important, but perhaps something that happens less and is therefore more valuable and significant. I think the other thing post-COVID is we're going to find that there are winners and there are losers. And the winners are going to be in the right organizations, in the right sectors, like anything online, anything technology, logistics, distribution, transport, particularly delivering goods because we've been buying goods. Losers, hospitality, travel, leisure. And the biggest challenges for our youngest generations. In the US, about 24% of people aged 16 to 24, that's Generation Z, they're out of work. And in the UK, it's about 15%. And it's the largest generation unemployed in the UK today. And that's going to continue because the problem for young people is their education has been impacted by COVID. Their work has been impacted by COVID because a disproportionately large number of them work in hospitality, leisure and travel. Last in, first out, so they haven't got a job. Now they can get jobs perhaps more quickly than about 8% of the UK, about 12% in the US who are over 50, 55. They are also out of work, smaller numbers, but they're going to find it maybe 2 or 3 times more difficult and longer for them to get another job. So there are losers, older people and younger people are losing, which means that the ones in the middle, globally, this is true. If you're somewhere between the age of about 35 and 50, the chances are that you're more likely to have kept your job or to be able to get another job and you be employable. But if you're older and you're younger, COVID is ageist.
Unfortunately, it is a very concrete feedback, actually, Henry. Thank you so much, because people think that everything will change in a positive way, but yet there is a fact that something will change, and we have to cope with it. And there is one question I ask everyone, and I really wonder your answer. If you could go back 10 years with your today's experience and know-how, what would you do differently, Henry?
Oh, that's such a brilliant question. I think that I would do 2 things differently if I could go back 10 years, but have my knowledge and skills and experience, my mindset of today. And the first thing would be that I would embrace technology more quickly. It took me quite a long time to adopt the technology because I work with people, and because the work that I do has an emotional aspect as well as an intellectual aspect. I think I was more likely to look at emotional and psychological aspects than technological. And I wished I'd picked up technologies earlier. The second point for me is that I wished I'd started speaking earlier. I am an introvert masquerading as an extrovert. But actually I'm quite reserved. And so it took me quite a while to feel courageous enough to say, I think I have a message, I would like to share it. I kept writing it and I kept coaching on it and training on it, but I didn't speak publicly until about 5 years ago when I suddenly thought, I feel ready with my message now. So I wished I'd done it more quickly.
Please talk more, please speak more, because you do it very well. Henry, I wish we could have more time, and definitely I will call later on to talk more in depth about this generational issue. Well, thank you for joining us today and your contribution, very valuable contribution. I hope to have a second session with you in the near future, and take care.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me, and I would love to speak to you again. Take care of yourself. Thank you.
Bye-bye.